process. This is Diane Lowe. I'm the Grants and Budget Director of the Nebraska Broadband Office. You're not going to hear very much from me today. I'm going to talk for just a couple minutes and then get out of the way for Amber, who is our expert on all things NEPA and permitting, to take the lead. So just a couple of quick things from me. Will you go to the next slide? Here's our agenda. I have just a couple, like I said, just a couple minutes for me, and then the rest will be focused on NEPA. This is the first of a few sessions we're going to look at here in just a minute on this topic. Please put your questions as we go through into the chat function, or hold them to the end, whichever works for you best. But questions are welcome. Please to the next slide. So here is our plan. You have an invite for this TA call. You will receive an invite for next week's TA call, early next week. The plan is to do 6 of these because this is what we think it's going to take to get you the key information you need to be successful getting your NEPA pieces through the process. 4 of it, so 4 calls specific to NEPA. There are also some things that you guys need to know pretty early on in the granting process, in the implementation process. So we're going to have a couple of calls focused on those items as well. I do need to note we are starting to sign subgrants, and we're very excited about this. But I also need to note that you have to have your subgrants in place before you can begin the NEPA process. So if there's something we can do to facilitate, support, encourage, whatever, please do let us know. Our goal is to set everybody up to succeed. With that, I'm going to shut up and turn it over to Amber Ross. Amber, are you ready?
Yes, thanks, Diane. Next slide, please, Rachel. So to kick off, I just want to, again, thank everybody for being here today. We're going to touch on a few topics today, and then we'll hit a few more over the next several TA calls. So I want to start off with a short introduction. NEPA is a requirement of federally funded projects, specifically BEAD. Its purpose is to identify potential issues early, avoid or minimize harm, and ensure projects move forward legally and responsibly. Once the subgrants are completed, you will receive a link from Submittable to complete a NEPA review for each project. I'll talk a little bit about this on an upcoming slide. After you complete the form, our team will review and use that information to complete NTIA's Environmental Screening and Tracking Tool, or ESAPT. The questions in the submittable form are the same as the questions in ESAPT. We may need to edit your responses for consolidation or clarity to ensure a timely NEPA approval from NTIA. While these environmental reviews must be completed by you and your team, our team is here to help in any way that we can, including facilitating conversations, explaining how to use the different review portals, and helping understand the questions. We ask that you contact us at nbo.admin@nebraska.gov. We are happy to set up WebEx meetings to discuss anything moving forward. Next slide, please. The NBO team is working closely with JEO Consulting. Matt Baker is the project lead and assists with permitting. Zach Cunningham and Eric Morrow are helping with NEPA and environmental efforts. Thank you to that team for your help so far. We consulted with JEO as well as NTIA's environmental and permitting team to prepare for this process. We've also met with other agencies across the state, many of whom will be helping with these presentations. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, links for one form per project will be sent out via Submittable after the subgrant is signed. Be aware that there are questions that may change based on your answers to other questions. An example, if you indicate that a project is going to involve installing new fiber or constructing a new tower, you will have to give specifics about the miles and kind of fiber that you're going to be using, or the construction details of the tower that you'll be building. Submittable does not automatically save your progress, so please make sure to save regularly by hitting the save button at the bottom of the form. Throughout the form, there are links to SOPs for each outside review portal and mapping tool. These are step-by-step instructions with screenshots and explanations to help you complete them in full and get them submitted. On some of the forms, there is coordinated language for you to include in the report. This language is to help the review agency know that this is an NBEAD project and will help speed up the process. When you've completed the form, please make sure to hit submit at the bottom of the form so that we're able to review it. Next slide. We know that receiving the submittable forms has been difficult for many of you. This is a screenshot of the email that you will receive from Submittable to access each form. You see that black box kind of in the middle? It doesn't look like it, but it's actually two separate links. On the left is the View Form button. This will take you directly to the form for that individual project. On the right is the View Submission button. This will take you to a full list of your PAs, and the NEPA forms are embedded in those. The View Form button is the link that you will want to use. This will take you directly to that form for that project. Next slide. For the detailed project description and location, think about the specific details of the project, the current conditions of the area. Is this project typical? We ask that as you fill out the full form, but especially in this section, be as descriptive as possible. We will be applying for a categorical exclusion based on this description. If you're not detailed enough, we will have to follow up with you so that we understand the project and any potential outcomes. If we don't have enough details, this will slow down the project and may even trigger restarting the whole review. We'll need to know the number of miles of fiber that's being laid, the size and specifications of any towers being built, just different details like that. So like I said, please be descriptive. Next slide, please. Funded projects that include construction or improvement of commercial satellite ground stations, towers, or comparable ground disturbances to support last mile services are still subject to NEPA, no matter how minor. A full review must be completed. LEO, and to some extent fixed wireless projects that are focused on solely providing customer premise equipment without ground disturbing construction activities, have been determined by NTIA to be exempt from NEPA. The full list of these activities is in Submittable. Projects that are determined to be exempt from NEPA must still complete a review for the compliance with the Endangered Species Act, which we'll talk about in an upcoming slide, but you won't be required to fill out the rest of the review. Next slide, please. For this section, you will need to identify any protected areas in the project area, such as national parks, national forests, historic landmarks and sites, and even state parks. The PADIS map will help you with the identification process. You should also consider the ownership and zoning of the project area. Any right-of-way permits that will be required should also be described here. Next slide, please. Every project must be reviewed for the potential to impact sensitive water resources and ensure that there is no adverse impacts that would occur to these resources. These sections are looking at the impacts to water quantity and quality issues that may occur from discharges to these water sources during deployment activities. For the floodplains and wetlands sections, you will need to discuss any alternative routes you considered and why you chose this plan, and how you're minimizing harm to the area. For the water resources section, there are no sole source aquifers in Nebraska. However, NEPA still requires that you use the EPA and the Nebraska Department of Water, Energy, and Environment maps to prove it. Site visits during construction that conflict with the initial reports may impact your progress. So if you have questions about these sections, make sure to reach out. Next slide, please. This section is expecting you to consider any hazardous materials within 1/10 of a mile of the project area. The Nebraska Department of Water, Energy, and Environment interactive mapping system will identify if the project has the potential to encounter any known or potentially hazardous materials during construction. as well as any regulated facilities. Early identification of these facilities or potentially hazardous materials help manage environmental and public safety risks during construction and prevent exposure or release of these materials during project construction. You will also need to consider any disturbances that will exceed the FCC maximum exposure limit. Next slide, please. Projects constructed with federal funding are subject to additional public review and scrutiny. For NBEAD, some things you might consider while answering these questions would include: will you be constructing towers in a controversial area? Would your project cause any substantial disagreements over the size, nature, or effect on the environment? Will your project degrade already existing poor environmental conditions? Next slide. All NBEAD projects must be able to show compliance with the Clean Air Act. The state of Nebraska currently meets federal air quality standards for all criteria pollutants as defined by the EPA. During project review, you will need to describe how construction activities will not exceed these thresholds. Additionally, all projects must describe how they will comply with the Noise Control Act. While you are asked to describe any temporary changes to the noise levels, the main concern is around permanent changes. Temporary and permanent noise impacts must be evaluated, and efforts to reduce or minimize disruption to the surrounding area will need to be described. Next slide, please. Impacts to public transportation facilities will need to be considered during the review process to ensure no major impacts during or after construction of the project. If public or private right-of-ways will be required to facilitate the project, discuss permits that may be necessary and how the project will comply with local and state transportation regulations, including any temporary traffic control plans. Also, if applicable, discuss any new transportation infrastructure that may need to be constructed or improved to complete the project. Next slide, please. Now we're going to transition and talk about the Nebraska Non-Game and Endangered Species Conservation Act. NESCA is a state law that protects wildlife species in Nebraska that are threatened, endangered, or otherwise at risk of becoming endangered. It requires state agencies and state or federally funded projects to consider impacts to listed species and their habitats to avoid, minimize, or mitigate harm when possible. NESCA is administered by the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. Conservation efforts may be required to mitigate any impacts, such as adjusting construction timing to avoid sensitive periods for protected species. Next slide, please. The Conservation and Environmental Review Tool is an online review portal that has been developed to expedite project reviews for threatened and endangered species in Nebraska, both on the state and federal lists. Project-specific activities have been developed for the NBEAD program to allow for more accurate and consistent reviews across the entire state. The Nebraska Game and Parks CERT tool SOP guidance document provides easy-to-follow instructions. Results may include the automatic approval of projects, required conservation measures, or further consultation with the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. Next slide, please. We'll now move into the Q&A portion of today's TA call. I also want to point out that we have Ruby Messick here from the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission to help us with any questions that come in about NESCA or the CERT tool. Before we open it to the floor, Rachel, do we have any questions in the chat?
There is nothing in the chat, so I welcome people if you want to unmute or raise your hand. Have at it. What questions have you got?
Good morning, everyone. I had a question right when they announced the deadline in the submittal for going forward with a grant, and I lost my headphone. So can you tell me again the final date you're hoping for?
Diane, I'm going to let you take that one.
So we don't really have a deadline date set for execution of the sub-grants. We just like to do them as soon as possible because you can't start this process till we get that done. And you also can't start spending money until we get that done. So
Thank you. We're just waiting for a few small things yet. Appreciate it.
wonderful. Thank you.
I believe we have Drew has raised his hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Our projects are all wireless in Nebraska. What's the, well, I know you mentioned we may be exempt from NEPA, but there is some work that we're not building any towers, but there is some work that needs to be done on existing towers and then work at customers' homes. Would that qualify as exempt from this process?
So it's going to depend project per project, and we can absolutely set up some time to discuss this more in detail for sure. But it will depend on if the additions are taking place to the towers that you guys own and operate, or if it's adding antennas and such to the customer's property. If it's only on the customer's property, then it is exempt. If it includes any work on your towers, then it is not, and it will require the full review.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it'll involve adding equipment to towers. So
Perfect. Yeah, so that would indicate that it would have to go through the full review process.
thank you.
Mike has his hand up. You want to go for it, Mike?
Sure, Rachel, thank you. Is there a guide somewhere that has all these online tools that we can use to start looking at our preliminary routes? Amber, I know you had some of them listed there, but is there something that we can get access to? Because I wasn't writing it down quick enough as you went through there, Amber. So.
Absolutely. So that's a great question. We are planning to post some of the, we're calling them SOPs on our website. So we will be posting those soon. We have not done that yet, but should be happening soon.
Thank you.
Nobody else is jumping up.
Amber, this is Michelle Lubkin. I was wondering, before the JEO information, I feel like you were giving an NBO.admin email address versus the generic NBO email address. Did I hear that correctly? I thought it was different than what I had sent previous emails to.
Yes. So our contact information is listed. Thank you, Rachel, for jumping to this slide. So it is listed here. We're asking that you direct any environmental permitting NEPA questions to this inbox. If you do send it to the grants inbox, it will still get to the right place, but just for ease of access, we are going to try to use this one for those questions. So nbo.admin@nebraska.gov. So if you send your questions there, we'll make sure that myself and anybody else that we need to help out with that question is made aware. So. If there are no other questions, we are asking that if you'll be working with an outside consulting firm or a different member of your staff for this part of the project, if you could just let us know that information. We'll need to know who they are, where they work, and how much we can talk about the project with them, how much we can go into detail with them, just so we know who we're going to be communicating with on each project. So, like I said, please send that to the nbo.admin inbox.
I thank everybody for attending this morning. We will hopefully see you again next Friday. Oh, Mike, go for it.
Yep, sorry, Rachel. I wasn't sure if Game and Parks was presenting or just here for questions, so I was waiting to see if they were presenting before I asked this.
They're just here for questions if anybody has questions for them.
Okay, so in a previous life, when I worked on a federal project and we went through environmental issues, particularly regarding endangered species like beetles and awesome plants that are, I don't know if you call them endangered or whatever, there was exceptions for previously disturbed ground. And all right away at that time was known as previously disturbed because ditches were carved out of the prairie, etc. And if you stayed in the public right of way, you were exempt from most of the environmental impacts. And I guess hopefully I'm explaining that correctly. Have you guys heard, is that part of this project too? Is there a designation for previously disturbed ground?
So in terms of the state review, we don't have any just like categorical exemptions like that. When you go through like that cert system, we do have some species that actually like exist in the right of way. We have at least 2 species that we've found in the right of way of roads. So just depending on where you're at, you may or may not be like in the range of that species. So sometimes you'll get the response like no impacts anticipated. And that's kind of like you're not going to impact anything, which is sort of like what you're explaining. It's like you're in the right of way and there's nothing there, you're good. But in other areas there is a potential for impacts. So we want to look at everything in general. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Any other questions for Ruby while we have her here? All right. Like I said, you'll see invites going out Monday for the next town hall. So look forward to that one. The cadence is going to be every Friday morning at 10 for the next few weeks. So hope to see you there. Thank you all for coming.